This episode, we sit down with a good friend, Shaun Maluga, from Australia, with his amazing 1970 Scout 800 that has been cross-country multiple times. And we had the opportunity to record this episode in 10 Sleep, Wyoming, at the 10 Sleep Brewery. So 10 Sleep Brewery, thank you for hosting us. Thank you for creating a great space to hang out and be with friends. And this episode, thank you, Shaun, for talking, and glad to be back on the New Legend podcast, Horse. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to us by Hagerty Insurance. I'd like to thank Hagerty for being such a great company, for all the work they do in supporting vintage 4x4 communities around the globe. I have personally about 5 rigs insured with Hagerty. And it's very simple to, such a simple process. They're very easy to work with. And I have been actually thoroughly impressed at the amount of coverage that I get, the thoroughness of that coverage, what it means, and the actual rates. Surprise, man, that they will beat any other carrier, because they know vintage 4x4s. They know the Scout world. They know the Bronco world. It's what they do. It's what they care about. So don't put your vintage 4x4 into the hands of just, paper pushers who don't know and care about our car culture. So give them a shout. Get your vehicle insured with Hagerty. Welcome to the New Legend podcast. Today is a very special episode, and I just want to say welcome back. We've taken a bit of a hiatus, and before I bring on our guest today, which I'm really excited about, I'm reminded as we are in 10 Sleep, Wyoming, that just the importance, and I'll have Shaun speak on this too. My guest today is Shaun Maluga, by the way.
Hello.
He is been in America for 5 years about?
Yeah, about 5.5.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about a bunch of stuff. But one thing, let's open with this, because life is busy. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are very busy.
Yes.
And I feel like even just the experience that we've had in the last 2 to 3 days, two days, right? We've been on the road. You've been on the road for a bit more.
Yeah, I think we've been 3, right, with the trip from Ames.
Yes, 3 days. Yeah. But man, so far I just feel like it's been blowing my mind. Like the Black Hills.
Yeah.
When we were coming down that pass on 16, coming into 10 Sleep, it was like, dude, this is amazing. And the conversations we're having, the people we're hanging out with. But so many times in life, and I'm sure a lot of you listening, you're just too busy to make it on a trip, or you're too busy to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And it's easy to kind of live vicariously through people doing cool stuff and on Instagram or on YouTube. But I just want to stress and encourage everyone to just do it, man. Just put something on the schedule. Like, we have a lot of stuff going on as a company. Like, we have builds, we're behind on some things, we're ahead on some things, but it's never a convenient time. As a matter of fact, we just we're closing on our house in 8 days. And my blessed wife, Heather, thank you. She's like, she couldn't come on this trip because we're packing. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it would have been easy to go. We just can't do it. We're canceling.
Yeah.
And so just pull the trigger on stuff, man. Get an idea. I don't care, even if it's little. I say, you can do little adventures. Yeah. Like my buddy Brandon, he's got 3 girls, 1, 3, and 4. So 1, 2, and 4. Yeah. And he just took them on their first camping trip. And he's like, dude, it was miserable. Yeah. But he did it.
Yeah.
So
sorry, to that as well. People just recently on Instagram messaged me about the sniper setup, which we'll get into later, I imagine, as well. Yeah. But about, I want to do a road trip. I want to get the sniper. Is it reliable? Blah, blah. And I'm yes, I love it. You can get it. There's more parts to fail, but don't let that stop you from going out. Just go out and be prepared that you might need to get a tow somewhere, or you might need to fix something on the road. But
that's right.
Chances are you'll be fine anyway. So just get out and do it. And then,
that's actually a great point, because that's another thing that the car people, like, so obviously, like, you have a cool Scout that I do want to talk about. Yeah. But a lot of car people go like, when I do this, when I do this, when I do this.
You need the perfect setup before you do anything.
Yeah.
I used to be that way. Like, I've never done any real motorsport at all. And with my Datsun back in Australia, I used to be like, oh yeah, once I have some money and I can make it faster and do this and do that to it. And it's like, I'll do it once I have the fastest, like the best car to go and do that with. But the opposite is better, where you have a slow car that you can learn in. And then, but it's always like, I'll do that one day when I get the car set up. But I never have.
And I think that's like the critique of the overland community, in my opinion. That is valid.
Yeah.
It's like, when I get the rooftop tent, then I'll go camping, or when I get the hot water shower, then I'll go. So I appreciate that perspective. Like, yeah, your truck might not. Now, obviously, like, dude, if your engine's out of the car, but you can rent a car.
Yeah, yep.
Go with a friend.
Our first camping trip out in New York, so we had no car in New York, obviously. And do you know the website Tentrr? Tentrr. So it's kind of like Uber for camping, so like peer-to-peer camping.
Okay.
And they started in New York, I believe, New York State. And basically, you have a property, you sign up for it, they send you out. Or I think they send someone out to install it. But it's like a kit, like a tent. So it's a big canvas tent, wooden deck, 2 like recliner wooden like outdoor chairs, and a wood burning stove for inside.
So these are like people's homes.
Yeah, properties.
That's cool,
man.
And
so it's kind of standardized, but then also people do their own flair, kind of like an Airbnb. Like some people will have running water. But like people are like, oh, it's like glamping, but it's not glamping. There's no water. There's no power. It's not done up like a nice hotel with fluffy pillows. It's just that your tent's set up for you, so you don't need to go and buy all of your tent and all that gear.
Right.
You still need to buy a jerry can or whatever, some vessel for water. The first time we went, we didn't have a stove or anything, and I planned the meals. I'm like, oh, we'll have bacon and eggs for breakfast, and we'll have these toasted like jaffles, so toasted like bread pie type things. Yeah. And we'll have that for lunch, then we'll cook dinner, and we had to make a fire for every meal then. So it'd been raining as well, so we were like making a fire for every meal. And
wow.
It was like that would have been handy to have a stove at that point, but we did it and it was fine. But,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's cool. I never heard of that before.
Yeah, and they've expanded. They're definitely in California, and I think I don't know if they're all over the states now or just a few select states, but it's a cool, if you don't have any gear or you don't want to set up a tent, then
what is the typical cost?
It does vary a lot, so it depends on what they provide and where they are. So the one we paid for in New York was under 200 but over 100, somewhere in that range, but you can find ones
I can imagine
cheaper, but it's not cheap in that regard.
Right. So to our opening point, there was a time you were living in Australia.
Yes.
That you had to pull the trigger on a pretty big, epic trip. So kind of talk a little bit about that process. How did you end up in America?
Yeah.
And what have you been up to?
So it's all my wife. She's a lawyer, and she came home one day and said her work sent an email around looking for someone in New York. I remember we were on the back deck at my house. My parents were visiting my parents lived like a 6-hour drive away from where we were. And we were like, should we do it? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, there's a real like shotgun, like, yeah, let's do it. And we had no idea about pay, how any of it worked. We just were like, I guess we'll do it. And like, we had a number, like, I guess if it's over this much, we can live. But
because New York's not the cheap.
No,
I've heard it's gotten a little bit cheaper.
It has. We got a rent reduction this year.
Yeah. So, that's good.
Yeah.
Not the best circumstances.
The rent reduction paid for my storage for the Scout. So,
good.
So we had this number, and like, if we get at least that, we can do it. And it'll be like, it's an adventure, so we can.
Yeah, but you weren't like necessarily. Did you feel like you were in a rut or like unhappy where you were? Or?
I had a weird job where, for where I lived, it was a photo studio manager, and high-end clients, good work, and it involved like some travel as well, and like it was shot all around the world, and then sent back to us in Brisbane to retouch, and so it was a good job, but I'd been there for nearly 10 years, and I had issues with it as well, so it was kind of I had a house in Brisbane, like a mortgage and everything, so it's like I probably never would have left otherwise. But this coming up was like, yeah, well, let's do it, make the change.
Did you sell your house?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's committing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a big rush as well because it was. I think we decided in October, September, October. Sold the house in November, December, and moved in January. I think it was.
Dude,
so,
I love it. Now, are you that kind of person naturally, like that you just like kind of not impulsive, but just like seeking opportunities and taking onto them?
I'm saying I'm in the middle. I'm not that scared of that stuff, but I'm also I'm not like really adventurous, but I'm also like I was in that job for 10 years. So I guess I didn't take any risks with that. But like I was like, so I was working this job and also doing my own work. So I was working my nights and weekends doing my own photography. So I was busy the whole time and didn't have a chance to like, look for anything else or do my own thing. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. And did you have like your Instagram handle in Australia?
No, so that I've still got my name, like Shaun Maluga is I got that account. I never look at it. When I moved to New York, Fuji just brought out this new X Pro 2. It was meant to come out pretty much when we got there, but it got delayed, so it was about a month or two later. And I'm like, well, I'm going to move to this new city. I'll get this new camera. I'll walk around with that, take some street photos with it. And I love Fuji cameras, which is,
That's what you shoot with?
Yeah. So I was Canon previously, and now I'm shooting with 2 Fuji cameras. So, yeah.
And so, did you, like, 'cause I feel like you kind of created this new alter ego. Like, do you take that opportunity when you do something so big? Like, that's a big thing, moving like a continent away.
Yeah.
Were there things that you kind of like wanted to change about yourself that you're like, I'm in America, like there's a new opportunity, like I'm just going to do some new things?
Yeah, I maybe like would have thought that. I don't know that I actually enacted any of that. Like it's like, oh, I could do this, do that. And I think you kind of like, you default to who you are in the end. So yeah.
But so, yeah, okay, that leads up perfectly to this then. So in Australia, did you take epic trips around the country?
No, not really at all. So regularly did the drive to where I grew up, where my parents live, 6-hour drive. But that's just highway driving. It's not an adventure. It's literally just going from point A to point B. As a kid, my dad had a short wheelbase Land Rover, and we used to do some bushwhacking, we call it. Like nothing too strenuous, I guess. But you sit in the back of that, no seat belts. In the middle of summer, bouncing around, and
they call them in Australia tracks, right?
Tracks, yeah.
I guess we call them trails,
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. There'll be a bunch of words. I'll try not to. I've got most of my words, I think, sorted out for America. There's a few, like I say. What do you say? You say sidewalk, footpath.
Yeah, sidewalk.
I always say footpath, and then no one knows what I'm talking about.
Really think of like a dirt trail through
Yeah. So we did a bit of that. A lot of camping as a kid, and my family. Even after I went to university, my family would go camping over Christmas time. There's an island of where we grew up, but they go in the middle of summer, go camping there, and it's the worst. It's like as hot as it was today, or hotter.
Yeah, right.
And we're like white as well, so get sunburnt. And
yeah. But and also I was going to ask you what's in your garage in Australia, but you have some cars.
Yeah.
So you're more of like a car guy than so you have those kind of off-roading camping roots, but then as a young adult, you've been into cars, right?
Yeah, and I never considered myself a car guy. Like I didn't care at all until I drove my dad's Land Rover in high school, and then my sister's Corolla, and then I got a little crappy Pulsar.
Nice. I love it, dude. Those are rad.
Yeah, it was cool. I think a surfer owned it before me, and it's like that little short nose, and you just drive the crap out of it.
Is it like from the 90s or 80s?
Might have been late 80s, like 89.
Dude, those are sweet.
Yeah. That was a bit of fun, metallic green. But it came to have to buy my first car, my first real car. And I was looking around. My dad wanted me to get a muscle car, so he always wanted a Valiant Charger, RT Charger. And
hold on, real quick. So, a Valiant Charger, is that what you said?
RT Charger.
RT Charger.
Yeah, I'm not sure the Valiant, it's the Valiant variant is the Australian part. But
So this is what year?
It would have been I don't even know much about them, like maybe 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
Okay, yeah.
I'd guess. Like
so
the one that everyone wants.
Like a Mopar, like a Plymouth Charger.
Yeah.
They had those there.
Yeah, and they were, so literally there's a guy in town that my dad knew, went and looked, he had it advertised for $18,000.
Excuse me, I'm going to get flamed. It's not a Plymouth, it's a Dodge Charger.
Dodge Charger,
yeah.
But yeah, this guy had one for $18,000, and my dad went to look at it, and he's like, oh, because he knew him, he's like I'll give it to you for 13. And then like my budget for my car was like a few $1,000s, not that much. And my dad took it for a test drive. He wanted it, like he was getting it for me, but he wanted it. Took it for a test drive and decided, we can't afford it, whatever. And then that exact same car sold. It was only like a year, maybe 2 years later. It was right when they boomed, and it sold we saw it online for $120,000.
No way, dude.
Like it might have been like 2 years, or maybe at most 3. It was like,
kind of kicking yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you have is that when you got like the 260 or the 240?
The 260 then, 260Z, 260Z,
Z
2+2, which it was meant to be like a quick resto, like it was like university holidays, about 2 months, like quick paint job, get it running.
That's what you guys did.
That's what we were going to do.
Okay.
And then they had the Z Car Nationals on around that time. We went and had a look at that, and there were some nice cars there. I'm like, oh, you can actually make these look really nice. So it ended up being that case of where you go, oh, if we're going to do this, we might as well do this. If you're going to do this,
of course.
Full, complete tear down, it just turned into a show car basically.
Oh really? Well, cool.
But didn't get there. So so I basically had 2 months of work on it. I go back to university. I painted it in primer, maybe I sanded it down to metal like 3 times, painted it in primer, go back to university.
Rust.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had that rhythm. It's terrible.
Yeah, go back to university, come back, and then start again, and then get to the paint stage, and then not finish it. So it's still in primer in my dad's shed at the moment. But
how many years?
That would have been 2003, maybe.
See, that's the same thing we started with. Like, so many times. Because that's what my first truck was, a 1969 Chevy C10 pickup.
Yeah.
That I made the mistake of I'm going to restore this thing.
Yeah.
After I had it 95%, all I needed was a drive shaft.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, I'm going to pull the cab off and the bed off, and and then it just sat in the woods until I junked it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another slippery slope.
Yeah, for sure.
The driving restoration is always kind of a more safe bet.
Yeah. It is nice, the idea of having a completely new vehicle, but then and even that thing of now to put that car back together. I got a spare parts car for it, so I got an idea of where things go. But I would have we put them all in bags at the time.
Yes.
It's probably all deteriorated. Probably can't read what's on it. We have no idea how it goes back together.
But it is special because it was one of your first cars, right?
Yeah. So I toyed with the idea of selling it a couple of years ago, and then now I'm back on board with at least finishing it and probably keeping it.
Good.
It's so during COVID I started researching what I'm going to redesigning what I'm going to do with it and ordering parts from Japan.
Because that's the other thing. I mean, some things can be timeless.
Yeah.
But even decisions you made 10 years ago about what it.
I've got old photoshops of what I was going to do to it, and now it's cringy looking at some of that stuff.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So what I'm doing now is more JDM style, which is
which is great.
Yeah, it's a bit more.
I appreciate that about even in the vintage 4x4 market and world, retro style, dude, the 80s and 90s were a terrible time for trucks, this big I mean, I don't know if you saw them, but they would be think of a long bed K20 Chevy pickup with 37-inch tires and a big light bar and a 4-inch tube roll, chrome roll bar. Just kind of terrible. I remember seeing those. Was that ever a thing in Australia? No.
Not so much. Even those, the cars we got were just different as well. So we got more of the utes. So
yes,
the Holden. I don't know what they're called.
And Holden is essentially I've always had this question because Holden has an LS engine.
I also don't know much about them.
Okay, I think Holden is like GM or Chevy.
Yeah, that would probably be. Because it's a joke where Holden guys in Australia, they would take the badge off and put a Chevy badge on it.
Okay.
And everyone who did that would be like, oh, you're an idiot. What do you think you're doing?
What's that word for the redneck?
Bogan.
Bogan.
Bogans definitely do that.
Bogan move. That's cool, man. So take us into the story of, so you moved to New York.
Yep.
Carless.
Yep.
Doing some tenter or whatever camping.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to get your 1970 International Scout?
So we talked about before we'll go back to Australia at some point. We talked about before we do that, we'll take like 6 months, hopefully, if we can, and travel around America, see America. And then we had to move to LA for a year for my wife's work.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, well, maybe we could buy a Scout and drive over there with that.
Where did the Scout come from? Like, where did that dream?
Actually, I'm pretty sure it was I don't think I'd ever seen them before, and I think I saw your Taylor Stitch. The first build, the yellow one with the photos.
Yeah, the iron and resin.
Oh, sorry, iron and resin.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I saw
Great.
that on Uncrate, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And then I think not long after that, or maybe it's a little bit after that, but then I think Wheeler Dealers did that episode with, did the Scout on that. And
they did like a Scout 800, right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, if we're going to drive across, like basically with our dog, we read stuff, and I was like, if you can avoid flying. So like, I will drive across then. So we're like, oh, I'll get a Scout and we can drive across in a Scout, that'll be fun. But then obviously looking in the East Coast for a Scout, they're all, one, not many of them, and two, if there are, they're rusted out, like they're, like the guards are all rusted out. Like
right.
Yeah.
I grew up in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like a muscle car kid, but I still was like a car guy. And I saw one Scout from 0 to 18, and it was shot. It was cool. I can remember it vividly. It was like a 1978 selective edition, like this kind of, not navy blue, but like this kind of royal blue with the gold bronze, with like the bronze wheels and the bronze and the gold stripe. But that's it, man. So you're right. They're far and few between.
Yeah. So I was looking on Craigslist, and like everything that came up that was good was on the West Coast. So then decided, well, it would make sense to. We just got a second-hand Kia Rio, drove that across, and then we'll pick up a Scout on the West Coast and put a bunch of offers on different Scouts, and they all fell through for one reason. A couple of Scout 2s even. I was in between a Scout 2 and 800 for a while. And then this one came up and it worked out. So.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. I got so lucky.
And the market was reasonable probably 5 years ago. Yeah,
at the point that I think it was still, I only got it the end of 2018. So
okay.
It was at the point where there were people trying to make some money out of them, but there were still the old guys who were like, this is like a junk old truck that no one wants anymore.
Yeah,
so
give me $5,000.
Yeah. So mine was listed for, I don't know if you get the price of it, was listed for $3,500 on Craigslist.
Dude, that is so good.
And I called him up and I was like, because I've been looking at them daily, like for searches for Scouts.
Yeah.
And this day I looked twice. I looked in the morning, looked in the afternoon, and it came, I got within like 30 minutes of it being listed. And I'm like, I'll take it. Like, I didn't know about how to transfer money in America because it's so weird here.
Yes.
So I was like, I don't know. Like, this seemed like a scam. Like, it's $3,500 for this like nice looking Scout 800 V8, gold bench seat, like everything I wanted.
Perfect.
And so I'm like, I'll drive up this weekend. I'll take it. I'll drive up and give you the
cash.
And
you're already in Southern California at this point.
Yeah. We just moved. I think we've been there for like weeks at that point, maybe.
Okay.
And
so right on it, man. I love it. Yeah. And was it? What area was it in?
It was near a place called Paradise near Sacramento.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So you had to like go get it.
Yeah, so the story was he was $3,500. I called back later. I think I went and saw a movie. I called him back later and to work out the details about going to see him. And he's like, oh, my wife listed it for too little. I can't let it go for that much, because obviously he had a bunch of people call in the meantime wanting to buy it.
Right.
And like we'd worked out he was going to deliver it to me in LA for like $700 or something.
Okay.
So it's going to be $4,200. And I'm like, I thought we had a deal. Like I said, I was going to take it, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, if you can deliver it for $5,000, I'll still take it. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure.
Okay.
So,
dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And how was it? Like, was it running and driving at the time?
No. So he trailered it down. And we got it running like very roughly, like, carb cleaner, like the fuel down the carb and stuff. And, like it turned over and everything, but it was like they were spitting a bunch of fuel out of the carb. And you've
probably got it dialed like now, but it's when you get those Scouts just like that, because mine on this trip is that Scout. Like it was from Southern California desert.
Yeah.
It'd been sitting since the last registration was 2004.
Yeah, it's probably similar to mine. 2001.
And it's just like, it's everything. Like you don't think about the blower motor on the heater, the wipers, like there's just kind of like suspension, brakes, let alone on an 800 all the upgrades that you have to make make it drivable.
So my point was to try and replace everything mechanical that moved so I could make it more reliable, and then while doing that improving to make it easier to drive and safer to drive. So that was power brakes, the 3-point harness, H4 headlights, disc brakes on front, new bearings, new hubs and everything, and any like new water pump, like anything you could replace, why not be replaced? And then we did a compression test, and one cylinder was a little bit low, but the rest were okay, so we didn't do anything internally, so it's still got the original internals presumably in it.
Well, do you remember what those numbers were?
I don't, off the top of my head. Like 140s in my head for something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
good.
I think maybe it was like they were all 140 and one was 120, or they were all 160 and one was 140.
Okay.
Maybe, something like
that's good.
lines.
Either one of those are a good scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. And then at what point did you take your first like more than 45-minute to an hour drive? Do you remember that trip?
It wasn't probably that long, but I remember taking it. I took it out to take photos. I took it on the Pacific Coast Motorway, Highway.
Yeah.
PCH, Pacific Coast.
Motorway.
Yeah. None of those words.
And in LA, everything's the 101, the 405.
They took it down there. I knew there was a spot down by the beach where there's like a little car park that goes around this bitumen onto the sand. And there were no cars there. For some reason, like a really tiny one between two buildings. So I took it down there to get photos, which is probably like a 15-minute drive at most. But, but you're on the highway for a little bit, so you're doing... what's the speed limit? There might be, I don't know if it's 60 at that point, but you're doing some decent speeds, and and then I just drove it around Venice a lot. Like I was working in a studio. It's probably like a 10-minute drive from my house, and
that's definitely the best scenario, dude. Like just getting like a couple hundred like around town miles.
Yeah. And then we had a dog when we'd go away. There's a place up in the hills we'd send our dog to, and so I'll go pick him up from that place, and drove up there with him. So that's probably like a 45-minute drive, I guess.
Nice. And did well?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. That trip, it might have been fine. I think another time, actually, but before the road trip, the big road trip from California to New York, we were back in Australia renewing our visas, got back into LA, got the fuel injection. Jake Barber, he put the fuel. He was meant to do power steering for me, but it was over Christmas, couldn't get any of the parts.
Got it.
And I had the fuel injection in the back. I hadn't had a chance to put it on, so I just had to sit in the back. And I came back, and he'd put that on for me.
Yeah, killer.
And so he'd tested it, and it was all fine. I went to go pick our dog up from this place, and it was on that drive, it was starting to like fluctuate. Like it was really like after about 20 minutes of driving, it would kind of like the fuel like would just start to fluctuate, and then it would stall. Turn it off a couple of minutes, and you start up, it'd be fine for a couple of minutes, then we'd do it again, and turns out it was just like the fuel return was too short.
Oh, right, got it.
Cavitation or cativation.
But did you ever have to get it towed?
Not in Venice. I think the only tow was on the road trip. I didn't replace the clutch and the radiator, and the clutch blew in New Mexico. So.
Just started slipping?
Exploded. So it was seized like to the engine when I got it, so I broke it free. And then I was trying to get to White Sands for sunset, and I was like cutting it fine.
In New Mexico?
Yeah.
So that's a good word to the wise. If you have an old vehicle and you have to physically like dump the clutch or like load it down to free up the clutch, you're not long for this world.
So I was doing like 80, and with all that weight on it as well, doing 80, trying to get to the sunset, and it just shattered basically, and had to
horrendous noise.
Yeah.
Wow. And then did you just get it fixed locally?
Yeah, so I got a tow. Luckily, where I broke down, there was enough off the side that I could pull over, and got a tow to Deming, New Mexico, small town.
Fun.
And then a guy there, I got it there at like 5:30 p.m. one day, and they had it back on the road by 7 p.m. the next day.
Dude, epic.
Yeah.
That's probably some small towns surprise you, like what parts they can source and
so they had there's like 2 different clutch sizes for a Scout.
Yep.
They had one in the store in town. They didn't have the other, and he's like, "We'll pull it out tomorrow and see which one it is." Apparently, you can use either, right? You can use,
Some like the flywheels are double drilled, and that's the best case scenario.
Okay. But he's like, "We'll pull it apart in the morning and see which one it is." And then, so either like best case, we got the one in town that will work. I'll just have to order one in, which will come in later. But the one in town was the one.
Perfect.
It was. So yeah.
And then what'd you say? The radiator blew?
No, radiator's still fine.
Okay, wow.
Those are just the 2 things I didn't replace. There's a few other little things, but for the most part, the clutch and the radiator. But
and I think we first met in Austin.
Yeah.
That was like 2019. That was just pre-COVID, or was it 2018?
Start of 2020. It was, yeah.
Oh, that was like February?
Yeah,
Wow.
so because on that road trip, I was by the end of it's been COVID. So basically, I was in Nashville, and just as I was leaving, they're like, "Oh, there's a few cases in Nashville," and then I went to Douglas at IH Fixer, just outside of Nashville, and he was doing some work for me, and I was camping there. And when I got to the campsite, it was all normal. By the end of the week, they'd close the office, and you could talk to them through the window, but you couldn't walk in and stuff. And then, like, I was going to take a little bit longer and get Levi was going to do the power steering for me. So I got my parts, because I bought all this stuff in LA. That's what Jake was going to do, but ran out of time. And then so I got them shipped to Levi. And I was going to get him to do that work, but then COVID happened. My wife was like, "Oh, I better get back to New York," because we had no idea if they would like shut borders and stuff. And pretty much like it wasn't like I just drove all night, but it took 3 days maybe to get back to New York.
And you went like into the belly of the beast.
Yeah. Yep.
So what was that experience like? Just being so quarantined and so
that must have been intense.
Tough.
Yeah, like remembering back now to like those first few months, it was like I remember washing I'd go, like, there's a 24-hour grocery store, which I'd go at midnight or 2 a.m. because there'd be no people there, or less people there then. And going home and, like, washing everything in the sink. And yeah, and that's...
It was scary those first couple months.
Yeah.
Crazy. So I don't know how much batteries we have.
Right, okay.
But, so you've been in America for 5 years.
Yeah, about 5.5, yeah.
An interesting 5 years. That was... in my lifetime, the most interesting political kind of deal.
Yeah.
But without getting too much into that, what has kind of like surprised you most about America and about the people that you've met and interacted with?
Yeah. So America in general, one thing was I didn't think about how pretty America is, like landscape-wise. I think because we get all like most of our TV and movies are your TV and movies. We have our own local stuff as well, but we still watch everything you watch. We watch as well.
Just Crocodile Dundee,
24/7. Channel Crocodile Dundee, followed by Steve Irwin.
That's right.
But yeah, so I was just like, I think you just kind of think about the cities and stuff, and then all the landscape is kind of like, for me at least, faded into the background, and then. I think the first time we went camping in New York State, and
that's beautiful up there.
Yeah, and it's like, cause like compared to Australia as well, it's like those big, like, I don't know if they're pine forests and like those big tall green trees and like flowing lakes, and it's like Australia, at least where we lived, it's all brown, and like the trees are very sparse, and it's like there are like rainforests and there are different forests around it, but it's for the most part where we were, like when you're driving somewhere, the side of the road is just brown. It's all brown.
Yeah, interesting.
And, so to go to like that really lush green forest in New York, it was like...
And it's dense, bro, like in the foliage in the fall. Like, you have that in Australia?
No, not really,
Yeah, that whole, like... Have you had a chance to get to, like, Maine and...
No, I haven't yet, so I'm going to try and do that this year or next, but yeah.
Like, yeah, it's so pretty, dude. Yeah. Rhode Island and Maine.
But my parents came over the first year we were here in autumn, and we drove to Nashville... in Memphis then, and so through the Smoky Mountains in the middle of autumn.
Yeah,
and it was,
that's pretty.
Yeah, that was good.
Sick. So keep going. So the geography and landscape.
Yep. And then people-wise, probably more related to New York than anything, but like this is talked about to death, but like that whole idea of like New Yorkers being rude or mean or whatever, but they're not. They're like abrupt.
Yes.
And they've got something to do, but if you stop and talk to someone, they're happy to help you or do whatever. Like it's just that everyone's doing their own thing, and what I've really noticed is that it's that real like look out for yourself because no one else is. So like, if you walk down the street and try and like avoid everyone, you're just gonna do that all day. Whereas everyone else, like I'm walking the dog and I'm trying to like not walk into people, and they just keep walking straight through. So it's like it's not if you are doing that, your day gets longer, and no one's gonna do that for you. So it's kind of like that, going back to your base instincts to like look out for yourself. And
so that's what you've noticed.
Yeah.
So that's different than like Australia.
At least where I live, like I'd say for most part all of Australia too, but yeah, Brisbane's like a big country town. Like it's a capital city. I don't know how many people it is, but it's described like a big country town. So.
And that's probably so let's keep going, because you've been to New York, which is really distinct, and I agree with you.
Which is also why we're there. Like it is so different to Australia, so it's like it's
and I agree. Like people are abrupt, like they're like they kind of speak frankly.
Yeah. another side note quickly. The other thing is that people, I think broadly in America, but particularly New York, will just have to rant at you, like yell at you about something, and then you're like, whoa, and then you're like, that was horrendous, they hate me, but like they forget about it immediately. Someone yells at you, they're dead to you for life.
Well, that's kind of like Iowa. Iowa's like, the Midwest, they have this like saying Minnesota nice or Iowa nice. It's pretty annoying, like, because people could hate you, but they'll see you and smile at you and small talk with you, but they really don't like you. In New York, they'll just flip you off until you like get out of here.
Everyone just needs to have a vent every now and again.
Right. But I found, like, so contrast that to Southern California.
Yeah, so the first thing we noticed was people were definitely nicer, or appeared to be nicer, at least in California. Just friendlier, like demeanors in general, and like I've talked about customer service was like, people were a bit more helpful, whereas in New York they were just like no one wants to be at their job, they don't know anything about what they're doing, and they don't, like, if you ask one question, they act like you've asked them 50 and they're like sick of you, like no, they don't want to deal with you anymore.
That's funny.
But I also do think people in California are also a little bit flaky, like, oh yeah, we'll do this, and then that never kind of happens.
That's funny. Because I had a saying, like, I'll check it out. That means like, I want to do it, I'll think about it. But you've also driven across America almost like twice, at least one and a half.
We like did the pretty much direct route New York to LA the first time, took about 6 days to do it, and then coming back, my road trip was I went a bit further south because it was winter, but so I went LA to like Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, like New Orleans up to Atlanta, and then did a loop around to Nashville, Asheville, Greenville, all that stuff, and then back up to New York from there.
So have you experienced, like, particularly in different states like Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, where like people are cool and kind and go out of their way to be helpful?
And definitely that like that country hospitality. I think that's what kind of you call it that, but that real, like, especially like when you're getting food somewhere, and like just real sweet sort of like friendly personalities.
Because I find that that's real, like, and what's interesting is like because I've lived on both coasts. I grew up in Connecticut until I was 18, so hung out in New York, tons of time in Rhode Island, Long Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine. And then I moved to San Jose when I was 18, so the San Francisco Bay Area. Lived in friends and family in Southern California, so cruise all up and down California. What was interesting is when we lived in California, we really never left California. For 15 years, I never left California. There's so much to do. It's kind of weird.
Well, the Scout, I was meant to get down the road early so we could then use it in LA to go and do trips out of LA. But it took me like, we were halfway through 2019 before I got it on the road. Right. And then it was still, like, I was still working it up until I left for the road trip. So,
And then in the Midwest, there's really nothing to do. So we started, and this was with a young family, we just started road tripping and exploring the rest of the country. But what's interesting is the people I know, not really on the East Coast so much. Like the East Coast, I didn't even know like the Midwest existed. From like from Pennsylvania to like Nevada or something. It didn't, like, no one ever talked about it. No one ever cared about it. But there was no, I don't know. There was no like there wasn't condescending. But what I've found in California, like some of the Bay Area people in Southern California would like the flyover states. Those are just, redneck idiots. Like they don't know what they're talking about. They have small minds, like, just kind of like disparaging. And so being on and living in the Midwest, I mean, they're really salt of the earth people that will, like, I've had so many people. I drive Scouts, so like they break all the time. And had tons of people be so helpful.
I think, like, again, not to get too political about everything, but the everything that, like, what the LA people are like condescending about, and what I've seen, like, it's fear. Like, it's fear of the unknown for some of the people. It's like when on the way over for this trip, at the campsite in Ohio, and this guy was like, where do you live? And I'm like, oh, New York. And he's like, oh, couldn't live there. And it's like, he's never been out of, never been in New York. He's like, I couldn't live in New York. It's like, well, it's because someone told you about the crazy stuff that happens in New York, and you can't picture doing that. And then I told him, I'm from Australia. He's like, oh, where are you from? Like, Australia. And he's like, oh, you can't have guns down there, can you? And it's like, well, yeah. Like, he's heard these things, and he's scared of like what that means for him, and like he can't picture, like, he's heard people talking about Australia with their crazy gun laws, and but I told him, like, my dad has guns, my granddad has guns, like, you can still have guns and go hunting and shoot and stuff. It's just a different system. So, yeah.
But that's interesting, because I think it's the same exact fear of the unknown that like the more liberal coastal cities have, of like these gun-toting, like they just are out like carrying AR-15s and they're going to shoot you at any moment, which is not true. But yeah, I'm just kind of envious a little bit of that, like as an adult being able to step into a culture and take it in that you're not like born in and from. We've had enough, like 5 years is a pretty good time.
And like I spend too much time trying to dissect the differences and talk about the difference and tell Americans why Australia is better for this reason. Like, it's annoying. Like, I'm that annoying guy, but it is like when you move and live somewhere else, it's like I think I just kind of assume like, oh, you're just kind of born a certain way and you've got this certain personality and that's just kind of who you are. But then you come over here and it's like, oh, you've got completely different people than what exists in Australia. And it's like, that's not born then. It's obviously learned from like the way your society works. So
that's
you kind of like learn that, the people act in a certain way, not because they were born that way, just because of, the things around them. And
context, dude. It plays such a big part. And I feel like pretty blessed that I've been able to live and travel to, I've only not been to Alaska. That's the only state I haven't been to. And that makes you a more well-rounded person from both perspectives. From like the person that lives in Ohio, like, dude, get out, go to New York, actually talk to those people. Go to the Rust Belt cities like Youngstown, Toledo, like Detroit. Go to all those cities and look at, like, talk to people. Talk to people from different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, like, and that's why I feel like travel is so important.
It's a really good example of, so like for the most part, a lot of Australians, we got like a really we'll skip this, get into political, don't worry, we'll skip that.
No, we don't have to.
Okay. It's just so like with our immigration, so boat people coming over illegally via boat. For the most part, Australia, like a lot of Australia would be like, like we got to stop them, they're coming to take what's ours. But then a small town near where I grew up, Billawilla, they had a family who came illegally in some way, but they were in the community, and the community knew them. And then recently the government like have put them into detention somewhere because they were illegal, but the community is like, no, we know these people, we like them, and they're like outraged. Whereas before, if that had happened in another city, those people would be like, get rid of those people, they shouldn't be here, or whatever, because they knew them. They're like, no, they're people too.
That's right. That's so important. And like, there's this, is Australia like culturally diverse?
Yeah, very, very much like a lot of Southeast Asian influence and people. We could describe like as a multicultural country.
Because like Australia orients us to, and just really quick, I wanted to give just a big thank you to 10 Sleep Brewing Company. We're here on their premises. So you see this beautiful outdoor setting. This place is really magic. It's in like this beautiful little valley. And they have camping, showers, like they had a food truck. It was really cool. So I'm just worried if the battery dies and we got to jam. So diversity in Australia. So do you have like the same kind of foods that we have?
In terms like not really,
like Italian food.
We've got a big mix of food, and a lot of, again, like Vietnamese, Thai, like all those like Southeast Asian cuisines. So like people always ask like, oh, what's Australian food? We don't have much that you would like a really clear category of like, this is a really Australian food, but really it's like modern fusion of like usually like Southeast Asian cuisine mixed with some sort of modern twist or something.
And do you find that represented in like more rural communities in Australia?
Probably not. No, like
Or just
they'll have
shrimp
like,
on the Barbie.
Yeah, they'll have like a Chinese like takeaway
Yeah,
store,
right.
and they'll have and yeah, but like maybe they have like a Thai.
Is there Mexican food in Australia?
Yeah, yeah. Not to the extent that it is over here. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely there is. And just in the last since we've been over here, like the American stuff, I think worldwide has probably picked up like hamburgers and stuff become like
Yes.
a real like go-to. So I'd go back to Australia and people are like, oh, here, let's go to this burger place. And it's like, no.
What's your favorite burger place, man?
In America?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Shake Shack in New York.
Shake Shack.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's epic.
The old Smoke Shack.
The original one.
Original?
The original Shake Shack is in like some park, right? It's
Well, they were like one of those like carts, like the out on the street
okay.
apparently, and then now they've got like a bunch of stores around. I think they've got some in California now too.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
How about In-N-Out, man?
Yeah, it was good. It's cheap, but I prefer Shake Shack.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Have you had Five Guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, Shake Shack. All right, that's good endorsement.
Yeah.
You got quintessentially, what is American food? Hamburgers, hot dogs.
Hamburgers, hot dogs, wings. Like,
Wings,
yeah, like
that's right.
if you go anywhere, it's always you can find that stuff everywhere you go.
The wings. I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
And like barbecue.
Yeah.
Is it like? Do you have that in Australia?
Yeah. Less so. And yeah, like the whole smoking stuff, and like we barbecue a lot, but it's not barbecue like you call barbecue. That's just cooking
shrimp,
outside
yeah.
in a grill with like meats and stuff.
Right, right.
It's not. Yeah, like it's probably a bit more elaborate here.
But you've been to like
smoking and
Memphis and Tennessee, so like you've been to the heart of barbecue country.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
Collard
yeah.
greens.
Yeah.
How about like deep fried catfish, like fried catfish?
Yep, had that. Yep.
It's good, man.
Yeah.
I like that stuff. Is there a lot of
I think we
seafood
had
in
alligator in just in New Orleans.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
You got crocs, right?
Yeah, we got.
Do they eat them?
They do. If you go, like, it's not a common thing, but you go to like their the crocodile like sanctuaries, or whatever they call them, and they all serve like a crocodile burger to you. And,
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I've tried it.
It's more. Is it more like novelty? Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not, you wouldn't go to the grocery store and buy a bit of crocodile to take home, but you do go there to buy kangaroo. So like a lot of
Yes, I was going to ask.
yeah, it's like it's a really lean meat apparently. So a lot of people into fitness will eat kangaroo meat. I actually haven't had it, but you can buy that at the grocery store. And
I mean, you don't have like roadkill in Australia is mainly kangaroo, right?
Yeah.
And are there different types of kangaroo?
Yeah, so you'll see if you like everyone's like, oh well, like are the kangaroos everywhere? And it's like, yes, if you drive anywhere out of the city, you'll see kangaroos. You'll probably see wallabies. They're like the smaller ones.
Yeah.
So they're probably
Okay.
like maybe like hip height. Like when they're hunched over, they probably get to about hip height. Maybe they get a bit bigger. I'm not sure. But what you are probably like more familiar with are the big reds, which are more like outback, like rural. Like they're the big tall ones that look muscular.
That
Some
are
of them
jacked,
look,
dude.
Yeah.
You ever see those?
That one that crushes the garbage can.
You ever see those? Like, I've gone on like Google image tangents on like these jacked.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're photoshopped.
No, there was one that particular. I think it was one particular kangaroo. I think there's a few that look like that, but there's one particular one that must have been around some guy who was taking photos or video of it, and he looks like he's like been going to the gym. He's just like the way he stands,
Just jacked. Crushing cans. So what's next for you, man? What's on the agenda?
This year I'm just traveling around doing some photos for the magazine, which we didn't even talk about. But
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. The magazine I've done some work for Automotive. They do like classic cars.
And this is an Australian magazine.
They started in Australia, but they've launched here in the US.
Killer.
So they're you can I think get them at Barnes and Noble now.
It's a great name.
Yeah,
I was jealous.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, whover thought of that was genius.
Yeah,
That's a genius
yeah.
name.
But yeah, it's all classic cars, like 25. It's not like a hard reel, but it's pretty much like 25 years older.
Okay.
And then they had like a bunch of old.
And like 4x4s,
Well,
cars,
they had everything
anything.
in it.
Okay,
yeah.
I like that.
But then they're just about to launch a solely 4x, like it's called Engage 4-wheel drive.
Okay, killer.
Yeah. And that's going to be solely, 4-wheel drive overlanding stuff. So the first
And
is
still have it in print?
still print. Yep. And I think it's going to be monthly. I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
how'd you get connected with them?
So Nathan Duff, he's the one who started it. He lives in Brisbane, where I was living and working. I did some work with him. I assisted for some photo shoots with him, and he was shooting a lot of car stuff. And then, I guess decided to start a magazine one day and like did the hard yards. And
That's killer, man.
Yeah.
We'll have to check out.
yeah.
So is it launched in America? Like you can buy it here yet?
Yeah, so you could always I think you could always order it here, but like the shipping was a bit of a killer. With like the Australia to US shipping was a bit of a pain. But now they've launched, so like basically like I think volumes 1 to 12 are on the website, which I should have checked all this before. I think you can probably buy them now in the US, but they launched a US specific issue.
Yeah.
I think it was a US launch issue a couple of months ago. And
is it like so more in the Engage 4-wheel drive, whatever what was it called?
Yeah, Engage 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, they more like kind of stock, tasteful, or like rock crawling,
I think
overlanding.
It's gonna be everything. So like I've only flipped through. I did a story for the first issue, and I've flipped through the PDF of it a little bit, and it's like it's not just classic. It's a mix of everything. They got like the new Bronco in there, the Defender. So Nathan's whole thing seems to be he's more focused on people and their stories. And so there's a couple of like road trip stories as well, which is what I'm here for. To shoot,
amazing.
Yeah, this road trip, and we'll get that into an issue coming up. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to invite you and Retromotive or Engage to come along to the Baja. Like we are restoring and going to race in the Nora 1000. The 1982, kind of like the closest thing to a factory-sponsored race truck Scout that existed, raced by Sherman Balch in 1981 and 82. In 82, it won the Score Class 3 championship, won the Baja 1000. Yeah. And it's a very storied truck. And so we're going to be racing it, and you should come along.
I would love to. That'd be great.
That'd be so epic.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I wanted to ask you, in that work, have you... Because I'm always interested in, like, is the Scout community... Because we traditionally and kind of normally hover in and around the Scout community.
Yeah. Before you go into that, by the way, I just want to say this as a public service announcement, don't worry about the people hating on the LS engines. Like,
thank you.
You do your thing. You're doing it great. And
all right, thank you.
Yeah, like I get it. Like people leave me negative comments, and I'm like, I stew on it for days or weeks. I'm like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or whatever. But yeah, like
right.
You do you. You're doing your
thank
vehicles,
you.
And
we've endured it, man. Like it was really bad. Like because in 2012, we decided to go really kind of all in on the LS platform for a number of reasons that we've talked about.
Out.
Yeah. That might have been a good note.
Yeah.
And, all right. Well, Shaun, thank you for hanging out. We're gonna wrap it up, but we'll get you on again, man.
Yeah.
And we'll talk some more. That was fun.
Yeah.
So until next time, we're out. We're really out. See ya.
Bye.